have with us today President Caboni, Provost David Lee, and then Vice President for Finance and Administration, Ann Mead.
So first, let me thank each of you for attending today. We've just briefed the WKU Board of Regents and the campus on recommendations that have been made by the Budget Council to help us manage through a $15 million budget reduction. I've been through the entire document with the board, and I believe many of you were there, so I won't do that here, but we'll certainly take some time to answer your questions. To recap the high points for you, we have a $15 million structural imbalance in our budget caused by cumulative enrollment declines over the last few years, increased fixed costs, and we've managed through that by using carry forward and one-time funds. Last fall, I convened the Budget Council, which is advisory to the President, and charged them with the task of, number one, making recommendations that address the current shortfall, number two, examining our current expenditures and funding priorities, and three, evaluating budget models that will position the university favorably in the context of the state's performance funding metrics. Earlier this week, I received those recommendations. There are 35 individual recommendations, and following a careful and thoughtful review, I've accepted some portion of all, or I'll forward to the Strategic Planning Steering Committee for inclusion in their process, 32 of the 35 recommendations. The three primary strategies we'll employ to reach our target reduction of $15 million are, number one, eliminating the university college. We'll move those academic units that currently exist in the university college to other colleges across the institution. Support services that are duplicative will be consolidated elsewhere, and some programs will be integrated into student affairs or other appropriate units. Number two, we're going to return regional campus management structure to DELO, which is the unit within the university that provides online degrees and short-term corporate engagement. DELO is best suited to respond to market demands and meet the workforce needs of the local communities we serve through our regional campus mission. And I want to be clear, we remain fully committed to providing access to post-secondary education through our regional campuses. We will gain efficiencies through these efforts by reducing duplication and changing the organizational structure, but not by abandoning those campuses. Number three, and most importantly, we have significantly reduced the size of our workforce at WKU. We've captured approximately 40 vacant positions through our hiring slowdown we implemented last fall. An additional 90 to 100 filled positions will be eliminated this spring. We'll not be able to identify today which specific positions across the institution will be eliminated. Those conversations with appropriate campus administrators about targeted programs and positions will begin shortly. Our intent is that all of those decisions will be made and employee notifications completed by mid-March. This is painful. This is painful for our entire campus. And I ask you to respect the fact that these decisions affect real people's lives. In fairness to them and to the unit administrators of various programs we're eliminating, we're going to take adequate time and measures to work through this process with our employees. And our highest priority is to provide support for them and to protect their privacy as they go through this difficult transition. We're going to do everything possible to assist those employees who will be displaced by this downsizing effort, and WKU Human Resources is prepared to provide guidance and necessary support. Finally, let me remind you, this is the first step in what will be a difficult spring for us. This is round one. The next phase of reductions will come in April once the General Assembly has finalized the state budget. Currently, that budget includes a nearly $5 million reduction in our state appropriation, as well as significant increases in our pension obligation. We'll have a better idea in April as well of our fixed cost obligations, and we'll plan for another year, particularly international enrollment decline that we've been facing for the past several years. We are employing multiple strategies to put WKU on a more sound financial footing for the future. And these include our strategic planning effort, our work with Huron Consulting to revamp our budget model, and of course this effort to balance our budget. It is my hope and it is our plan that we will be positioned within the next year or so for growth again, and that we will be able to put this behind us and ensure future budgets are more stable, predictable, and adequate. With that, we'll be pleased to take your questions.
Dr. Caboni?
Yes, ma'am.
Those 90 to 100 positions that will be eliminated, is that across departments or are there particular departments that will hit?
It's across departments, and so one of the things that the Budget Council has made clear is that they have allocated those reductions based upon revenue and enrollment metrics. And so one of the things that a budget model will do in the future is think about how resource allocations match those drivers. And so the Budget Council took a look at those, but these will be job losses across the entire enterprise. Everyone will share in this bank.
And does that mean the departments that have more students and more revenue will lose fewer people, or is that kind of how you mean revenue producing?
So what the Budget Council has worked on is try to identify the places where there are fewer students. And the challenge that higher education faces sometimes is that we don't move as quickly to reallocate resources based upon demand. And we know that there are units on this campus that have lost in the past 5 to 10 years as much as a third of their enrollment. But the question is, has their staffing changed along with that decline? So the Budget Council will really, its recommendations really focused on that kind of thought process.
For the university college, which holds programs like African American Studies and Interdisciplinary Studies, do you all have any idea of how those specific programs will go about being absorbed into different parts of the university?
So I'll let the provost address that one.
Andrew, I've begun to think about this a little bit here in the last several hours, and how we're going to approach that is that I will sit down with the folks in those programs and have some conversations with them about what they think might be a reasonable match for them. I'm also going to be having conversations with deans and probably some department heads in the other colleges about absorbing those into those other colleges. So I think we will be able to work this out in a pretty smooth and a very transparent way. I'm not terribly concerned about being able to find suitable homes for those programs, and they'll continue to function. And from a student perspective, I don't think you'll notice much change. You might go to different classrooms, but other than that, I don't think you're going to notice much change in how those programs function. But part of what needs to take place is some conversation with the folks involved on both ends of that process about the best way to do that, and that's what we'll be doing in the next couple of weeks.
So will we be retaining all of the academic programs from University College?
I have no plans to eliminate any academic programs from University College as a part of this process. Now, you did hear the president say that going into next year, there is going to be a pretty thoroughgoing review of academic programs at the university, and those programs currently in University College would certainly be a part of that process. But I don't see striking any of those programs by the stroke of a pen in the next several weeks by any means.
Andrew, let me build upon that, because one of the things that's set out by AAUP, American Association of University Professors, is a process by which programs are reviewed, and we're going to use that process when the new provost arrives. This is not a quick fix. It's really thinking about what do students who come to WKU want to study, and do we have those programs? Do we have programs that folks may be less interested in studying? And so over time, the institution will evolve. But that's a process we haven't even really begun yet. Provost Lee will put the pieces in place so that when we have a new provost on July 1, hopefully, that individual, she or he, will be able to really take the baton and go forward relatively quickly. But as with many things in universities, quickly is relative, and this is a laborious and extended process.
And if I could build on the president's comment, part of what would happen with any academic program that's eliminated at any time is that our accrediting body requires us to teach that out. In other words, we can't just do that overnight. So for a baccalaureate program, we would be required to offer that program for at least 3 years to allow students who are in that pipeline to finish the program. So even if there are changes in academic programs, the needs of students are certainly going to be considered in that.
On those regional campuses, are you going to eliminate buildings and go to online, or is there staff elimination at the other campuses?
So one of the things that already exists is online programs counting within the enrollment figures for those regional campuses. And so I don't think there's any intention to move away from in-person delivery. The intention really is to focus the offerings in such a way that they're directly connected to the local economy and what the folks in those communities desperately need. I've used this example on a couple of occasions. As much as I think it's interesting to offer a history degree on our Glasgow campus, I'm not sure that best meets the needs of the local economy. And so we're going to go through those conversations as well. The buildings are there. We're going to remain good partners in delivering education in person in those communities. There will be reductions in staff, though. One of the things that I've talked about on a couple of occasions is how do you centralize services in a way, for example, that might be offered to all three campuses but in a central location. And so one of the things that, as this rolls out, we'll take a close look at as an institution is, are there duplicative functions across campuses that might be eliminated? Are there ways to go about the work of marketing and recruiting that could be centralized? And DLO certainly does a great deal of that already. But all of those conversations are evolving. One of the things that we've made sure in this process we focused on is allowing those decisions to be made as close to the decision point as possible. It doesn't make sense for me to sit in my office and make those kinds of decisions. We want them to be situated as close to the action as possible. And so as Provost Lee has his meetings, as Ann Mead has her meetings with various deans, department heads, and vice presidents across the enterprise, that's where those decisions will be made.
So some of those 100 positions eliminated will likely be from the regional campuses?
They'll be across the entire university.
I was wondering if, with raising the CIA, how might that change the student demographic of the university?
Yeah, we're very sensitive to that, Andrew. I think it's an important question to ask. One of the challenges we have is, as an institution, is are we making, or anytime we admit a student, we need to make sure that that student has a reasonable chance of being successful. And I think that has not been our past practice. If there is a cohort of students we've admitted that have essentially a 0% chance of graduating in 6 years, the question is, should we admit them? I've said no, it's not fair to them, it's not fair to their families, and it's not fair to the folks that subsidize that education. We need to help them get to a place where they can be successful and get the support that they need. And that may not be at a 4-year institution. We need to work on that. I also am concerned, and we will focus on ensuring that we remain a diverse institution. But here's the question with which I grapple. If we have students who are, and you pick how you want to describe this. If we have students who are first-generation college students that we admit in the fall semester because we want more of them, but they're not here in the second semester, have we really increased our diversity? And so we want to make sure that as we admit students, that we're paying very close attention to, are they ready to be at a 4-year university? Are they prepared? And can we get them to graduation? That's the most important work that we're doing.
And just some numbers, the total number of university employees now and the total number of enrollment and the previous 3 years to show the decline.
Yeah, so we're still at about 20,000 students, but the numbers within that 20,000 have shifted over time. And I've been talking about this for about 8 months now, that we have dual credit students who are high school students who take courses with us, and those numbers have grown from 500 to about 2,500 during the past several years. We've had essentially an equivalent decline in full-time, fully enrolled students, a large percentage of which are driven by our international enrollment. And so that's something not just that we're facing here in the Commonwealth, but it's a national trend around international recruitment and enrollment. Our faculty and staff numbers total about 2,000. So we're talking in total about a 5% decrease in the workforce.
And the number of vacant positions is 40 or 50, 40?
It's a moving target. It changes just about every day depending upon the process that we have in place, but it's right now it's closer to 40 than 50.
Okay, thank you.
What kind of impact, if at all, does this shortfall have on tuition costs?
Yeah, we've had those conversations. One of the reasons we've worked to eliminate faculty and staff vacant positions is that we don't want to do this on the backs of students and families. We have to shrink our budget, and if we increase revenue, we want to increase that revenue by growing our enrollments. Certainly, we have fixed cost increases. There are always drivers of tuition, and we remain focused on and committed to being an affordable option in the Commonwealth. And I think that we have a strong market position where you think about the experience that students can have here, and it's tens of thousands of dollars less expensive than other options in the state. We're going to continue to focus on that affordability.
Speaking of on tuition, I know this is listed as to go to strategic planning, but could you talk a little bit about implementing this new strategy or possibly incremental and differential tuition?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting idea, and that's the reason that I didn't accept it initially and sent it to the group that is really thinking about options for the future. One of the questions we want to make sure we're asking ourselves is, as we enroll students, how are we making sure that we're covering the costs of that education? So if you think about what it costs to educate a student in the sciences, you can imagine that being perhaps more expensive than other types of education. Music education also pretty expensive because of the one-on-one connection and instruction time in those labs. And so as an institution, I hope the spirit of the recommendation is we should be mindful of how costs work and also thinking about the ways in which revenue works, and can you connect that to the kinds of programs we're offering. So no real details on that. There are as many universities as there are in the nation. There are as many different kinds of ways that tuition is charged, and we want to do a deep dive on ours. At the same time, I also want us to be as clear and simple as transparent as we can be. So if you create a system that's not understandable, I don't think anyone benefits from that. And so we'll encourage the strategic planning group to incorporate that into the work that they do.
So would it be something along the lines of, and I may be misunderstanding you here, that if a student were enrolled in, say, English or something like that as opposed to engineering, would they possibly have two different tuition models?
That's what differential tuition means.
Okay.
But again, there's no commitment moving forward that that's the way we're going to go. We're going to put this into our conversation. And to be candid, I know the strategic planning group has already been looking at all of these models.
Governor Bevin suggested that that programs that don't lead to jobs, needed by the state, sort of be eliminated or cut back. Is that a consideration in this, or is it, more of the number of students enrolled in a program, like who needs French literature or history or music, or is it going to be related to jobs in any way?
So I think this will be a thoughtful process about what do we want to look like as a university. I can't imagine a university that doesn't have a school of music. And there's something joyful about that and necessary about being an educated person, that one has experiences outside of a narrow kind of job training. And so I remain committed to, and have talked about this in multiple venues, that we're going to be a university of breadth that produces educated citizens. That's important for the Commonwealth. I also believe that we know students who graduate in our applied engineering programs essentially have jobs before they leave our gates. And so we want to be thoughtful about being clear with folks who come here what their job prospects are. At the same time, I'm a speech and rhetoric graduate and have done lots of things that were not directly connected to speech or rhetoric, but what a wonderful grounding for everything that I've done in my career and in my life.
And I would really like to express my appreciation for the President's strong thoughts on this matter. I think the liberal arts are at the core of what it means to be an educated citizen, And for the future that this Commonwealth wants to build for itself, it's crucial that we have a rising generation of folks who understand the liberal arts, understand the values of the liberal arts, the kinds of questions that the liberal arts ask. That's always been at the heart of who we are as an institution, and I am very confident that it's going to continue to be at the very heart of who we are as an institution.
Good afternoon, sir. So obviously with these cuts, families are going to be concerned about what the next steps are in the process. As president and the leader of this university, how would the university assist these families after the fact once these cuts take place?
We've done this with the greatest care, compassion, and hopefully grace for the individuals whose jobs are going to be eliminated. And as the conversation unfolds, we're going to sit down in person and communicate those decisions. I want to make sure that folks receive that information directly from the person who supervises them. And that's important for several different reasons. That's how a caring institution does this. That's number one. Number two, in that meeting and afterwards, our Human Resources Office is poised to wrap its arms around folks and support them as they go through the process, not just with the technical aspects of what job transition looks like, but also lending aid in thinking about how we might help them get to the next thing. And I have a meeting next week with Ron Bunch, who is the president of the Chamber of Commerce. Today there are 1,200 vacant positions in Warren County that require a 4-year degree. We're going to do everything in our power to create a pipeline for the folks whose positions have been downsized to have access to those open positions. This has nothing to do with talent. It has everything to do with resources. And so I want to make sure those folks have a path, and we're going to work hard to do that. The last is no one will lose their job tomorrow. That everyone whose position is eliminated will have their salary and their position through the end of the fiscal year, June 30, unless they separate from the institution before that. And so we're trying to give a long runway for folks to work through that transition. And I said this earlier, and I want to reiterate it. These decisions are the hardest for any leader to make for a university. And we're going to do it with compassion. We're going to do it in as humane a way as is possibly done. And we're going to do it that way because these are our friends, these are our colleagues, these are people we work alongside each day, and they deserve that. And it's a marker of who we are as a university.
We have time for a couple more questions.
Let me go ahead and add on that one. The Department for Human Resources is partnering with the Department for Career Services and Professional Development, and will reach out to employees on a one-on-one basis to evaluate and help them with their resume and determine whether there perhaps is a career change they might want to retool and go back to school. So all of this will be done on a one-on-one basis.
Question. South Campus houses a lot of University College, I think. What does this mean for that facility?
So I don't know what it means precisely for that facility, but I do want to address that. What it means is the students who have been in University College and wanted to access resources, they're no longer going to have to get on a bus and go to South Campus. By bringing those resources here, we're going to make sure that students who live here can access the resources here, and I think that's a great benefit. What we do with the facility and how we shift that over time, I think that will be an evolving conversation. But the centralization of resources for University College students, I think is an important marker of how we integrate folks into our community instead of separating them, keeping them out somewhere where they don't feel a part. And that's directly tied to our issue, to improving our retention as well, I think.
Well, I have one more thing. It's maybe not as important as the academics, but obviously athletics is taking a hit as well. How does that affect athletics? Is it the same thing kind of across the board there, some positions there, some facilities there? How does that work?
It is important that everyone across the university will share in some part of this pain. I've said on many occasions, I'm a supporter of the liberal arts, but I'm also a supporter of athletics. And what we want to make sure we do is maintain our ability to educate students but also provide an experience for them that is distinctive. And part of that here at WKU is our athletics program. And so they certainly will share in some portion of the reduction. At the same time, we want to make sure that we continue our winning traditions, and I think we've had a great season thus far, certainly in men's and women's basketball. And that's important for us as we work through our recruitment opportunities. What we want to make sure we do is talk about not just the affordable nature of a WKU education, tens of thousands of dollars less expensive than competitor institutions, but also that it's a total college experience, that you can come watch amazing football, basketball, forensics, theater, journalism at the College Heights Herald, anything that you want to do on a university campus, we have available for you here. And if we don't have it, we'll work with you to create it. And so they're part of the solution, but they're also part of the larger effort to have even more students come to WKU.
So is that something that will be ongoing then, the decision on how you handle any potential cuts to athletics?
So the way we roll this out is it will be rolled out across the entire university. I would argue that there's not one particular division that's been targeted, that everyone across the enterprise will share in the pain. The conversation around what the reductions are and what positions are ongoing. They're ongoing in Potter College,
Yes.
They're ongoing in our College of Engineering, they're ongoing in student affairs. And so that's the case with athletics as well. So this is all going to be an ongoing process to determine which positions, which programs, and how do we do this more effectively and more efficiently. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. It's been a tough day.